Donald Trump and his erratic foreign policy is joining Europe together economically, geopolitically, not only in how they protect their own, but also in economic policy, making them stronger today than they were before the start of the Trump administration, weakening America. We talk about it all on Global AF on the Midas Touch Network. And here's a clip. Anthony Davis, Michael Popok, Global AF is back. And we couldn't abandon our audience. We just had to get our act together and get back on the air. So much to talk about, Anthony, at the intersection of law, politics, and global socio-economic affairs, with the European Union banding together to stop a tyrant from threatening their very existence. No, this is not a World War II documentary. This is what's happening in response to the first 50 days of the Trump administration. As Trump attacks allies, he sides with our enemies. He sides with imperial dictators. He gets played by all of them. He loses the tariff war that he started before it even began. He emboldens leaders like Claudia Sheinbaum, who is mopping him up and bullying the bully in an amazing way. Trudeau, if they ran a vote again, I think the guy would get reelected based on how he's doing against Donald Trump. And then we've got what those closest to Donald Trump, how they're reaching out to what they consider to be their analog, the alt-right in Europe, led by the Teal PayPal mafia and Elon Musk. Let's break it all down for everybody. Welcome to Global AF. Hi, Anthony.
Hi, Michael. It's interesting. You know the phrase "New World Order." Now, that was always, if you look it up on Google, it kind of talks about it being a conspiracy. And I used the phrase world order in a video last week, and YouTube actually put an advisory on the video about New World Order, even though I didn't say New World Order. And I thought this is really interesting because this is basically what we're dealing with now. It is a New World Order. When you see America shift its position from supporting the Allies in Europe since 1941 when they entered World War II, to suddenly taking the side of the Russians in this war over Ukraine, which could now see this split, which is this close between Europe and America, and Elon Musk now throwing his weight behind the US exit from NATO. He actually posted on his platform X, doesn't make sense for America to pay for the defense of Europe. I mean, this is very serious. And for those of us in the US who, US-born people who've grown up in the United States, there isn't that feeling necessarily, unless you had family, grandparents, great-grandparents who were in the Second World War. There isn't that feeling that Europeans have of literally having their cities bombed to shit. And so I think that the reason that the Europeans are reacting in this way is because there is historic trauma, and they have to absolutely jump on this, because they don't want to make the same mistake as they did in 1939.
So we have the European Union holding secret and emergency meetings in order to commit to almost $850 billion US to replace the security safety that they expected from the United States. France is now offering their nuclear umbrella to protect Europe. Germany is being, I always get a little nervous when I start talking about a German leader talking about the unification of Europe, but they are. And we've chased our allies, Canada and Mexico, potentially into the hands of the Chinese when it comes to trade by starting a tariff war that not only no one wants, but the American manufacturing and farms sectors, it's going to devastate them. Let me say this out loud. State the obvious. The American people cannot consume enough products and services made by the American economy to keep America afloat or its businesses afloat. That's why free trade is usually a good thing, both diplomatically and economically. Donald Trump sees, I don't know what he sees. He says he doesn't see free trade as a positive because he's against diversity, so he doesn't like people from other countries. He's a germaphobe, and he doesn't like to travel. So that's who's running our country. When you were just outlining sort of what has just happened, I've seen a couple of comparisons that really strike home for me. One, it's like if Superman decided to go into business with Lex Luthor. And secondly, it is like The Plot Against America by Philip Roth, which is a historical fiction about what would have happened if FDR was beaten by Colonel Charles Lindbergh, who was a Nazi sympathizer. It's hard to believe, and an America firster. That sounds familiar. And if what would have happened is we'd all be speaking German right now. No pun intended. So that is, and The Plot Against America does have this kind of Nazi overtone, and there's this new romanticism and fascination among the inner circle of Donald Trump and Trump himself. Trump's family name is Trumpf. We know where they came from, and they have a sick fascination with dictators and Nazis.
And we know that Trump himself has a fascination with Adolf Hitler, reading Hitler's speeches, and it was rumored that, this was one of his hobbies. I can't imagine him reading anything, but if he's going to choose that, and experts have said that the way that Trump delivers speeches, repeating the same lies over and over so that they form part of the vernacular, the build the wall and the lock her up, that's all Hitler behavior from Hitler speeches. And so there are these connections. And of course, Elon Musk, who's pretty much running the federal government right now, Trump is golfing like it's a national competition.
By the way, did you see the amount of money the American people, the bill that they're asked to foot every weekend because of his golf trips?
Yes, it was insane.
It's tens of billions of dollars already.
They're trying to look for fraud, waste, and efficiency, and it's like, well, just stop golfing, stay in the White House, and be the president, and you'll save more money than Doge is finding, stopping people in Africa from eating a solitary meal a week.
And maybe you don't have to touch our future and people's Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and veterans benefits. And by the way, he's fired more veterans. Yes. And Veterans Affairs benefits than any president in history, and they all voted for him in red states. So there you go for that. But maybe you would, if you didn't send Pete Hegseth down to Guantanamo Bay to watch 9 migrants land on a C-17 so that Laura Ingraham could get an interview, and he flew down on the equivalent of Air Force One. Maybe you'd have a couple of shekels left over to invest in the American people.
Talking of Hegseth, interestingly, it was announced, he took the flak for this, but really it was Donald Trump's direction to stop this intelligence sharing. And this is the other thing now that we are seeing, is that in one hand, Trump is being very woolly about his allegiance. Obviously, there was that scene where he ambushed Zelensky in the Oval Office with J.D. Vance. The whole thing was, ricocheted around the world as an example of how not to do diplomacy. But what goes with that is this stuff that they're not really talking about, which is, not funding Ukraine for the war effort anymore, not doing the intelligence sharing. Ukraine said that their drones are now around 20% less effective because they're not getting the intelligence. They're not actually getting the software, access to the software that enables them to be accurate with their bombs.
Well, there's 4 dead Ukrainians, at least, when Putin took advantage of the lack of intelligence sharing and slammed a missile into Zelensky's hometown at a hotel. And when Kellogg, the military attaché for the Trump administration assigned to this issue, when he was challenged about that, he said, well, it's Zelensky. He said this in front of the Council of Foreign Relations. It's Zelensky's fault. We're not sharing that. People are dying because they've decided to, as Kellogg put it, we need to hit the donkey in the head with a 2x4. He got hissed and booed at the Council of Foreign Relations when he said it was Zelensky's fault that intelligence had been cut off. The guy it's a president at war, as Zelensky put it, in a democracy in that region that the rest of Europe rallied around for a reason, because if Ukraine falls, and it whets the appetite further of Putin, the imperial dictator of Putin, to roll his tanks. What's next? Poland? What's next?
Yeah.
You know?
Well, Poland is definitely next. I mean, this is the concern. You know, Putin wants the Soviet Union back again. This is how his plan has always been. You have to look at his history and his background, you know, and I like looking at these old documentaries of Boris Yeltsin. There's always a skinny little Putin in the corner, you know, kind of conniving Putin who was like ready to take over. He's a former KGB agent. He is extremely manipulative and he knows the long game and he plays the long game. And getting Trump elected was exactly what he needed in order to see this war, because he you know, Trump wants Putin to win the war in Ukraine because then he doesn't have to worry about it anymore. He literally is like, okay, because he said in that meeting, didn't he? He said, look, otherwise you're just going to have to fight it out and, you know, then we'll kind of see what happens. That was him being like, I don't want to have anything to do with this. There is absolutely no moral duty. And then, of course, there was that line that J.D. Vance spun the other day about, you know, getting the British involved and the Europeans involved, saying, well, you know, bringing in soldiers who haven't fought a war in 30 or 40 years. And that was so insulting to the British and the Europeans, of course, because, you know, the British had their troops in Iraq and in
Coalition
Afghanistan.
of the willing.
Indeed.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it is the lack of historical knowledge that makes these guys just, you know, lose any respect that they might have started with.
Yeah, no, our European allies are going to come out stronger for this, but at the expense of America. I'm not talking about American hegemony. I'm not looking to reestablish the empire. However, all the things that went into are spreading from the perch of what the president, usually being the leader of the free world, is really over. Our brand of democracy, led by Donald Trump, this BS populist fascist thing, is not playing well on the road. And the Europeans realize they're going to have to go it alone economically, geopolitically, and militarily and security-wise. That's going to strengthen them. I've said out loud, I wouldn't be surprised if they had a revote on Brexit and the UK didn't get back.
I've been discussing this in my family.
That's what I think.
Right, because, you know, part of the reason why I left the UK was because of Brexit. I was so sad about it.
Welcome back. You're here on Legal AF. Hit the subscribe button. Help us continue to grow this pro-democracy channel, completely independent. Follow me, Michael Popok, over on the Midas Touch Network. And, of course, our new show with Anthony Davis of the BBC and of the Midas Touch Network called Global AF. Until our next report, I'm Michael Popok. I'm Michael Popok, and I got some big news for our audience. Most of you know me as the co-founder of Midas Touch's Legal AF and the Legal AF YouTube channel, or as a 35-year national trial lawyer. Now, building on what we started together on Legal AF, I've launched a new law firm, the Popok Firm, dedicated to obtaining justice through compassionate and zealous legal representation. At the Popok Firm, we are focused on obtaining justice for those who have been injured or damaged by a life-altering event by securing the highest dollar recoveries. I've been tirelessly fighting for justice for the last 35 years, so my own law firm organically building on my Legal AF work just feels right. And I've handpicked a team of top-tier trial fighters and settlement experts throughout all 50 states known as big auto injury attorneys who have the know-how to beat heartless insurance companies, corporations, government entities, and their attorneys. Big Auto's attorneys working with my firm are rock stars in their respective states and collectively responsible for billions of dollars in recoveries. So if you or a loved one have been on the wrong side of a catastrophic auto, motor vehicle, rideshare, or truck accident, suffered a personal injury, or been the victim of medical malpractice, employment harassment or discrimination, or suffered a violation of your civil and constitutional rights, then contact the Popok Firm today at 1-877-POPOK-AF or by visiting my website at www.thepopokfirm.com and fill out a free case evaluation form. And if we determine that you have a case and you sign with us, we don't get paid unless you do. The Popok Firm, fighting for your justice every step of the way.